Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are taking on, well, a massive challenge.
A huge one.
We're diving deep into the career of maybe the single most famous yet least known figure in contemporary art.
Has to be.
The pseudonymous, England-based street artist, political activist, and filmmaker the world knows simply as Banksy.
It's a truly unique assignment for us, because we're trying to piece together the story of a subject whose entire existence is just. It's defined by speculation, by contradiction. I mean, his identity is the art world's greatest secret. It's constantly being debated, but at the same time, his works command this just staggering global attention and wealth.
And the sources we've gathered give us this incredible roadmap. They detail his timeline from, his graffiti roots in the Bristol underground scene, all the way to becoming a master of global, large-scale political provocation. Our mission isn't just to list his greatest hits. We want to track his technical shift. We want to analyze that enduring identity mystery and really try to figure out the exact mechanisms he uses to stay relevant and critique the very system that, ironically, fuels his own fame.
Exactly. We have to go beyond just the viral moments. The real puzzle is, what does it mean for an artist to be world famous when their name and face are completely unknown and their works are valued in the millions?
How does an act of vandalism turn a crumbling brick wall into a blue-chip asset overnight?
And maybe the most critical moment of his career. We need to understand the philosophy, the why, behind this artist intentionally trying to destroy one of his most expensive pieces in the middle of a live auction. That's the depth we're aiming for today.
That's our mission. So let's start right at the beginning of this ghost story. Okay, so we don't have an official portrait, but we do have some vintage reporting that gives us the closest description we've ever really gotten.
Yeah, this goes all the way back to a 2003 interview Simon Hattenstone did for The Guardian.
And this is before the global fame, really. So let's unpack this profile. What did the journalist actually, see?
That 2003 description is so crucial because it gives us a baseline. The journalist noted Banksy was, and I'm quoting here, white, 28, scruffy casual jeans, t-shirt, a silver tooth, silver chain, and silver earring.
It paints a picture, not some bohemian studio artist, but someone really connected to the underground music and club scene.
Oh, absolutely. And in a very specific cultural observation, the journalist compared his look to a cross between Jimmy Nail and Mike Skinner of the Streets.
And for anyone who might not get those British cultural references, that comparison suggests a persona that is, working class, a little bit rough around the edges.
Ideal, intimidating.
Yeah, and definitely rooted in UK urban culture, not the high art world. This lines up perfectly with the geography we have confirmed, right?
The geography is non-negotiable. His roots are just firmly planted in the UK, specifically Bristol. The sources confirm he reportedly lived in Easton, Bristol throughout the late 90s.
And that city was critical.
It was everything. His career grew out of that incredibly vibrant Bristol underground scene, which was a total petri dish of creative collaboration between artists and musicians. He was famously influenced by 3D.
From Massive Attack.
Exactly, who was also a graffiti artist before he co-founded that seminal trip-hop band.
So the DNA of his art is just infused with that early sound, that culture. We also know he was pretty active locally, even outside of the art scene.
Yeah, his community ties were strong. The sources mention he was a goalkeeper for the Easton Cowboys and Cowgirls football team in the 90s.
That's not just trivia, is it? It shows a deep engagement with the local community.
For sure. He even toured with the club to Mexico in 2001. So when you combine that local history with his visual style, it's clear his whole persona grew organically from the city itself, not from some art school studio.
And all of this local detail leads us to the biggest question. Who is the man behind the moniker?
Right.
The leading theory, which dates back to 2008 when the Mail on Sunday first broke the story, points squarely to one person, Robin Gunningham.
Robin Gunningham is still the prime suspect. And the reason that theory is so durable is because the evidence combines, old school reporting with cutting-edge academic analysis.
So Gunningham was born July 28, 1974, in Yate, which is a small town near Bristol.
That's right. And multiple former schoolmates from Bristol Cathedral School and other local associates have reportedly corroborated that Gunningham is Banksy.
And this is where the anonymity game takes a really forensic turn, doesn't it? We're not just talking about eyewitness testimony anymore. We're talking about a geographic fingerprint that ties Gunningham to the art.
Exactly. So in 2016, researchers at Queen Mary University of London They conducted a study using geographic profiling.
And this is a technique that's usually reserved for tracking criminals, right? Like serial burglars or even terrorists.
Precisely. They map the locations of crimes to predict where the person lives or operates from.
Applying a criminology technique to art, that's immediately fascinating. So what did the profiling actually reveal?
Well, they correlated the known locations of 192 confirmed Banksy street art pieces across Bristol and London.
Okay.
And they mapped those against the documented movements and addresses that were associated with Robin Gunningham.
And the result?
The study found a definitive, highly statistically significant link. It basically supported the journalistic claim that Gunningham is the person responsible.
So it essentially turns Banksy's body of work into a forensic trace.
Which is deeply ironic for an artist whose main defense is his anonymity. The academic community now largely accepts Gunningham as the individual behind the name.
And the sources even give us a pretty neat sort of conversational explanation for the pseudonym itself.
Yeah, the naming transition seems logical. Gunningham reportedly started using the name Robin Banks, which, if you say it quickly, colloquially...
Robin Banks.
Open Banks.
It just easily morphs into Banksy. We also have some early physical evidence, like 2 cassette sleeves he designed back in '93 for a Bristol band called Mother Samosa. They have Gunningham's signature on them. But of course, because the enigma is more profitable than the truth, the speculation spectrum is still wide. We mentioned the link to Robert Del Naja, 3D of Massive Attack.
A personal friend and a graffiti artist himself back in the 80s. That one always comes up because of their shared Bristol history.
Del Naja has consistently denied it, but the theory is hard to shake, especially with their collaborations.
And then you get the more amusing theories that pop up whenever Banksy does something big.
Like the 2020 Twitter hoax.
Right, speculating that Banksy was actually the former Art Attack presenter Neil Buchanan. His publicist had to issue a formal denial just to stop the meme from spiraling out of control.
My favorite bit of anecdotal evidence, the one that shows the pure absurdity of this mystery, involves a local councillor named Billy Gannon.
Oh, the case of Billy Gannon from Pembroke Dock in Wales. It's the perfect meta-commentary on the Banksy effect.
He actually had to resign from his job.
He did. In 2022, Gannon resigned from his local councillor duties because the persistent public speculation that he was Banksy was getting in the way of his government work.
And his resignation quote is just remarkable. It sums up the whole problem of the mystery.
He said, "I'm being asked to prove who I am not, and the person that I am not may not exist."
I mean, that's the ultimate so what of Banksy's anonymity. It creates this vacuum that the public is just desperate to fill, even if it messes up a local politician's career. You're forced to defend against the possibility that you're a cultural ghost.
And while he's maintained his anonymity with incredible discipline, a forgotten interview recently surfaced that seems to confirm his first name.
This is a key piece of direct evidence.
It is. In November 2023, a rediscovered BBC interview from 2003 came to light. The reporter, Nigel Wrench, asked the artist directly if his name was Robert Banks.
And he didn't deny it.
He didn't deny it flat out. He gave a slight clarification. His forename, he said, was Robbie.
Which aligns perfectly with the Robin Gunningham, Robin Banks theory.
Perfectly. It suggests the mystery is less about discovering some shadowy facts from nowhere and more about protecting the public-facing persona of a very specific, disciplined individual who's trying to keep the focus on the work, not the worker.
So if anonymity is the weapon you need to wage this guerrilla war against the establishment, then the stencil is the mechanism for delivering the message with speed and precision. But he didn't start with stencils, did he?
No, not at all. Banksy's beginnings were firmly rooted in the traditional graffiti scene. His early years, so roughly 1990 to 1994, were spent as a freehand artist.
And he was part of a crew.
Yeah, he was part of a Bristol crew called the Dry Bread Z Crew, or DBZ, alongside 2 other artists known as Cato and Tess. And that groundwork led to his first known large wall mural, The Mild, Mild West.
That was painted in 1997 on Stokescroft in Bristol. Tell us about that one. What does it depict, and why is it so significant for understanding his early political focus?
It's just a powerful, enduring symbol of that anti-establishment feeling. It shows a teddy bear, this symbol of childhood innocence, actively standing up to authority.
How so?
It's lobbing a Molotov cocktail at 3 riot police officers. And it covered an advertisement on a former solicitor's office, which is a statement in itself, using a site of established law to depict violent resistance. It really confirms that the anti-authoritarian thing was there long before his global fame.
So he was clearly capable of doing large-scale freehand work. Why did he make that drastic pivot around the year 2000 to stenciling? For an artist to choose a technical constraint like that, it must have been a highly pragmatic decision.
Oh, it was purely practical. It was driven by two critical interrelated factors,
Right.
minimizing the time he spent exposed on a wall and reducing the legal risk of getting caught.
And he tells the story of how that happened, right?
Yeah, Banksy himself provided the origin anecdote. He claims he switched techniques while he was actively hiding from the police under a rubbish lorry.
The moment of inspiration came from evasion, from seeking refuge under a piece of garbage. That speaks volumes.
It really does. While he was under there, he noticed the perfectly formed stenciled serial number on the vehicle's chassis. And that was the aha moment.
So by adopting stenciling, he could pre-prepare the image, get it on the wall in minutes instead of hours.
Exactly. It's essential when the police are actively hunting you. This technique allowed him to create these intricate, striking images very, very quickly. It was a technical innovation born purely of necessity.
But we have to acknowledge, he didn't invent the concept of life-size stencils.
No. And it's essential to credit the influence. The sources are very clear that he drew inspiration heavily from the French graffiti artist Blek Lerat, who pioneered the life-size stencil technique back in the early 80s in Paris.
So Banksy essentially took Blek Lerat's style, the use of rats, for example, and modernized it for immediate, hard-hitting political commentary.
That's a good way to put it. He modernized it for the digital age.
But this technical shift, however pragmatic and successful it was, wasn't universally welcomed by the street art community, was it? Why did stenciling bring so much criticism from his peers?
Well, it was seen as fundamentally cheating by a lot of traditional graffiti artists.
The purists.
Exactly. Especially those who specialized in freehand tagging and really complex pieces or wild style, which required immense skill, time, and risk. For them, the difficulty and the time investment were part of the art.
So using a pre-prepared stencil was seen as a shortcut.
Yeah, a shortcut that diminished the authenticity of the act, and this criticism really boiled over into that very public, long-running feud.
The graffiti war with King Robbo.
That's the one.
No.
The feud reportedly began when Banksy allegedly painted over one of Robbo's long-standing tags, which is a massive transgression in the graffiti world. Robbo retaliated, other writers joined in, and they were all challenging Banksy's legitimacy based on his method.
So the very technique that gave him anonymity and allowed him to scale his message globally also made him an outsider in the community that birthed him.
It's a total paradox of method. His technical choice defined his public success, but created constant conflict with the underground. Speed and efficiency were prioritized over purity, and the result was global recognition.
So once Banksy mastered the speed of the stencil, the question became, what political message could he deliver in that flash of time? What were the core themes he was launching at the public?
The messages have been remarkably consistent from the very beginning. They are almost always anti-war, anti-capitalist, and fundamentally anti-establishment.
And he uses these recurring images. Rats, apes, policemen, children.
He does. He uses them as archetypes to deliver the payload, to make the political message universal. He didn't just see graffiti as art, though. He characterized it as a form of guerrilla warfare.
Right, he called it underclass revenge.
Absolutely. He argued that it allows an individual to snatch power, territory, and glory from a bigger and better equipped enemy. The whole act for him is about shifting power dynamics.
There's that famous quote of his, if you don't own a train company, then you go and paint on one instead.
Exactly. His goal is to show the public that centralized power, which seems all-encompassing, is not terribly efficient, and it can and should be deceived.
And he didn't just target public walls. He targeted the hallowed halls of traditional art institutions, subverting the very definition of a masterpiece.
This is where that concept of cultural jamming becomes paramount. In 2003, he staged the exhibition Turf War in London.
And this one was infamous because he painted on live animals.
He did. And even though the RSPCA deemed the conditions acceptable, it sparked this very immediate animal rights protest where an activist chained herself to the railings. It just showed his willingness to use shock to draw attention to his broader message about societal hypocrisy.
And his technique of subverting classical paintings is absolutely brilliant, taking this revered, centuries-old art and sticking a cynical modern twist right on it.
In a 2005 exhibition, he showcased several oil paintings he'd modified. Take Monet's Water Lily Pond, for example.
Symbol of tranquility.
Right. He adapted it to include...
And even though reproducing banknotes is a criminal offense, those notes became instant collector's items. The authorities must have taken this seriously.
Oh, very seriously. The notes were highly collectible. But the legal implications were real. In 2016, the Bank of England actually felt compelled to contact the American Numismatic Society, a respected academic body, to formally remind them of the illegality of publishing photos of the banknotes without official permission.
So the central bank was actively concerned about the legitimization of these fake notes.
They were, which solidified their place as these high-value, illegal collector's items.
Another devastating piece of appropriation is that 2004 screen print, Napalm. Can't beat that feeling.
Yeah, that's one of his most visually devastating pieces of political commentary. Banksy took the iconic 1972 photo, The Terror of War.
The one with the screaming napalm-burned Vietnamese girl, Phan Thi Kim Phuc.
That's the one. But in Banksy's print, she's not alone in her tragedy. She's being led cheerfully by a brightly colored, oblivious Ronald McDonald and Mickey Mouse.
They're holding her hand.
Holding her hands and smiling at an invisible audience, completely ignoring her visible terror. It's the ultimate statement on how toxic, pervasive commercialism encroaches on and sanitizes human tragedy.
And his institutional pranks, smuggling his own commentary into the temples of high culture, really cemented his identity as a guerrilla artist.
He managed this multiple times in 2005, successfully placing his own subverted artworks unannounced in major American institutions, MoMA, the Met, and the British Museum in London.
Let's talk about the audacity of Peckham Rock.
Peckham Rock is just satire at its finest. In May 2005, Banksy hung his own version of a primitive cave painting in Gallery 49 of the British Museum.
What did it depict?
It showed a primitive figure hunting wildlife while at the same time pushing a modern shopping trolley. It hung there for several days, undetected by museum staff.
So high culture is easily fooled and slow to recognize critique.
That was the point. And then he took that cultural jamming straight to the happiest and most commercialized place on Earth, Disneyland.
The 2006 prank.
In September 2006, at Disneyland in California, he dressed an inflatable doll in the style of a Guantanamo Bay detainee orange jumpsuit, black hood, handcuffs, and placed it right inside the Big Thunder Mountain Railroad ride. They had to shut the ride down to remove it.
And finally, his attack on celebrity culture, which he clearly sees as a pure form of consumerism.
The Paris Hilton CD prank. Also in 2006, Banksy managed to place up to 500 copies of her debut CD, Paris, into 48 different UK record stores.
But they were sabotaged copies.
Completely replaced. The cover art was his own Hilton appearing topless, or with her chihuahua's head replacing her own. And the remixes, done by Danger Mouse, had mocking titles like Why Am I Famous and What Am I For?
And people bought them before the stores realized what had happened.
Yes, and the prank itself created immense, immediate commercial value. Some of those altered CDs sold on eBay for as high as £750. The act of subversion became the true commodity.
So this is where the ultimate irony begins. Banksy, the anonymous anti-capitalist artist, quickly becomes the world's most successful commercial artist. It turns out authentic rebellion is maybe the most valuable commodity there is.
It creates its own massive economy. In December 2006, the journalist Max Foster actually coined the phrase, the Banksy effect, specifically to describe how Banksy's success raised the profile and the astronomical prices of other street artists globally.
He didn't just get famous. He legitimized an entire genre in the auction house.
He really did. And you can see the financial explosion during that pivotal 2006-2007 period. Celebrities and collectors jumped in almost immediately.
Christina Aguilera bought a piece for £25,000.
She did. But the auction houses really took notice in October 2006 when a set of Kate Moss silkscreen prints, done in the style of Andy Warhol's Marilyn Monroe pictures, sold at Sotheby's in London for £50,400. That was 5 times their estimate.
And the following year, his prices just rocketed past £100,000.
2007 was the year of acceleration. Sotheby's auction bombing Middle England for over £102,000. Other key works like Girl with Balloon and Bomb Hugger sold for well above their estimates. But the peak of that early acceleration was April 27, 2007. Space Girl and Bird fetched an incredible £288,000 at Bonhams.
20 times the ISO.
20 times. It was unbelievable.
So this overwhelming commercialization forces Banksy to respond artistically to his own skyrocketing value. He has to criticize the very mechanism that's making him rich.
He had to address the paradox head-on. To coincide with the second day of those really successful 2007 auctions, Banksy updated his website with an iconic image.
The auction house scene.
Yes, showing a group of people bidding furiously furiously on a canvas, and the painting they were bidding on read in large, unmistakable letters, "I can't believe you morons actually buy this shit."
So what's the insight here? Is this genuine ideological critique, or is this the ultimate piece of self-referential marketing?
I think it's the latter disguised as the former. The key insight is that Banksy's career proves that the most valuable commodity in the late-stage capitalist art market is the authenticity of rebellion.
Right.
So by publicly critiquing the morons who buy his art, he validates his anti-establishment stance, which in turn makes the next piece he sells even more valuable.
Because the buyer is purchasing a piece of that validated rebellion.
The message becomes the marketing strategy. It's genius.
That era also saw him enter the world of mainstream film, not just as a subject, but as a director.
Yeah, we're talking about the documentary film Exit Through the Gift Shop. It debuted at the 2010 Sundance Film Festival and got nominated for an Academy Award in 2011.
And the film focuses on Thierry Guetta, a Los Angeles-based French immigrant who documents Banksy and other street artists before he becomes an artist himself, Mr. Brainwash.
Right. But the film is notoriously ambiguous. Is it a genuine documentary, or is it Banksy's greatest, most drawn-out prank on the art world?
That's the central debate, isn't it?
Yeah. It is. The consensus is that it's a profound piece of meta-commentary. Banksy shows us how quickly an art market hungry for the next big thing will elevate a mediocre figure like Mr. Brainwash just because he has a story and momentum.
So he effectively directed a movie that mocks the very mechanism that then gave him an Oscar nomination.
And his response to that nomination was typically dry. He said, "I don't agree with the concept of award ceremonies, but I'm prepared to make an exception for the ones I'm nominated for."
And that self-deprecating humor and political edge were then exposed to millions of Americans through a collaboration with the ultimate commercial empire, The Simpsons.
In 2010, Banksy was credited with the highly political opening couch gag for the episode Money Mart. It was a dark, shocking sequence depicting the production of The Simpsons in this dystopian sweatshop.
Showing workers and abused animals producing the merchandise.
Exactly. It's a direct, hard-hitting, anti-globalist critique aired on one of the most commercialized TV shows in history. And it was contentious internally. Fox actually sanitized parts of the opening for taste before it aired.
But despite his enormous cultural weight, authorities consistently view his street work as simple vandalism. They place property rights above political art.
This fundamental conflict persists. Peter Gibson, a spokesman for Keep Britain Tidy, said unequivocally that Banksy's work is simple vandalism and that his fame glorifies it.
And the Westminster City Council proved this when they removed One Nation under CCPV in 2009.
They just painted it over, stating clearly that Banksy has no more right to paint graffiti than a child. The irony, of course, is that property owners who find a Banksy on their wall quickly discover that the act of vandalism has just multiplied their property value 100-fold.
So once Banksy's name was established globally, his canvas became global. He started tackling some of the world's most serious geopolitical issues. His prolonged engagement with the Israeli West Bank barrier is maybe the most significant example of his commitment to deep activism.
It really represents a massive physical and ideological commitment. In 2005, he created 9 distinct, powerful images directly on the imposing concrete sections of the barrier.
These weren't quick stencils, were they?
No, these were highly symbolic, large-scale visual metaphors designed to inject humanity and possibility into a structure meant to divide.
What are some of the most memorable visuals from that series?
One piece showed a large ladder going up and over the imposing structure, suggesting a simple way to bypass the complexity. Another depicted children digging a literal hole right through the wall, injecting this element of hope, of escape.
And then, 12 years later, he escalated his involvement. He didn't just paint the wall, he built a fully operational hotel right next to it.
The Walled-Off Hotel. It opened in Bethlehem in 2017. Banksy financed its creation to mark the 100th anniversary of British control of Palestine.
And it functions as an immersive political experience, not just a place to stay.
Right. What's critical about the design is that every single room in this hotel faces the West Bank wall, which is often called the worst view in the world. It makes the political reality absolutely unavoidable for the guests.
That's activism through commercial real estate. He's forcing visitors to engage with the reality he's critiquing. He also uses the profitable art market for direct philanthropic causes in the region.
He does. In July 2020, he sold a triptych called Mediterranean Sea View 2017. These were modified Romantic-era paintings of the seashore, but he altered them by adding discarded orange life buoys and life jackets washed up on the shores.
Directly referencing the migrant crisis.
Exactly. The 3 paintings sold for £2.2 million, with all the funds dedicated entirely to a hospital in Bethlehem. It's a direct conversion of art value into humanitarian aid.
Beyond geopolitical hotspots, Banksy also engages in these massive temporary dystopian disruptions.
Like Dismaland in 2015.
The bemusement park.
In Weston-super-Mare. It was designed as a direct, dark parody of Disneyland, intentionally lampooning the disappointing nature of themed attractions. It had a derelict Disney castle. Dark, cynical installations. It was open for only about 5 weeks and got massive global attention.
He also used his art to comment directly on the European migrant crisis and the refugee camps.
In 2015, he created the mural The Son of a Migrant from Syria at the Calais jungle camp. It depicted Steve Jobs as a migrant.
And his reasoning was profound.
It was. Jobs' biological father was a Syrian migrant, making the wealthy, iconic capitalist a powerful symbol for the modern refugee. And the artwork was released with this statement from his publicist, using incredibly potent, dark irony to address the political fear around the camps.
What did it say?
That when people look at neighborhoods reduced to rubble with no hope, what they're seeing is a vast outdoor recruitment center for terrorists. And we should probably address this for all our sakes.
But his activism moved way beyond commentary in 2020. He privately funded a rescue vessel.
This was a monumental step, moving from the conceptual realm of art into direct, expensive humanitarian action. In August 2020, it was revealed he had privately funded the Louise Michel, a former French Navy boat, specifically to rescue refugees crossing the Mediterranean.
And he painted it pink.
Painted it pink and decorated it with an image of a young girl holding a heart-shaped safety float. This financial commitment just shows that, for Banksy, the critique has to be matched by tangible, dangerous support for the marginalized.
The pandemic and the war in Ukraine also brought forth these immediate, impactful artistic responses.
During COVID-19, he followed self-isolation, famously creating a chaotic artwork in his own bathroom. But more significantly, in May 2020, he donated the piece Painting for Saints.
Also called Game Changer.
Right. He gave it to the University Hospital of Southampton as a tribute to NHS staff. That painting was a massive financial boon for healthcare. It later sold for a record £16.8 million, with the proceeds going entirely to NHS charities.
And in 2022, he physically traveled to a war zone in Ukraine.
Which was highly risky and incredibly powerful. In November 2022, he confirmed a visit, creating 6 murals in war-torn sites like Borodianka and Kiev.
The one with Putin.
Yes, the image in Borodianka, which depicted Russian President Vladimir Putin being judo-thrown to the ground by a small boy. That image was instantly embraced, later turned into a Ukrainian postage stamp. Again, showing that swift transition of his political commentary into popular iconography used by the state.
Before we move on, we need to touch on 2 more localized but significant works that highlight that tension between political satire and local governance.
First, in 2014, near the GCHQ headquarters in Cheltenham, he created the Spy Booth mural.
Depicting 3 men in sunglasses snooping on a telephone box.
Okay.
A direct critique of global surveillance.
Right. And that piece later vanished, probably destroyed during renovation in 2016. It just proves that even globally famous art is ephemeral when it's on private or government property.
And the highly controversial Pigeons mural in Clacton.
The Pigeons mural from October 2014 appeared 10 days before a local by-election. It showed 5 gray pigeons holding signs with explicitly anti-immigrant phrases, "Go back to Africa," "Migrants not welcome," all directed towards a more colorful migratory swallow.
The intent was clearly satirical, mocking xenophobia.
Clearly. However, the tendering district council removed the work immediately after getting complaints that offensive and racist remarks had appeared on the wall. It just illustrates the risk that political satire, especially anonymous satire, can be misinterpreted or just deemed too inflammatory by authorities who prioritize public order.
Okay, this section deals with Banksy's ultimate struggle. The fight between the guerrilla artist and the global commerce system he accidentally created. His existence is a legal and commercial nightmare for him, and nothing embodies that contradiction better than the great shredding prank of 2018.
The auction of Girl with Balloon at Sotheby's was truly unprecedented performance art.
The painting was sold for just over £1 million.
Exactly £1,042,000. And the very moment the gavel confirmed the sale, an alarm sounds from within the picture frame. The canvas drops and passes through a powerful shredder hidden inside, partially destroying the work live during the auction.
This wasn't a spontaneous act. The preparation involved some significant engineering.
Oh, it was years in the making. Banksy later revealed in a video that he had secretly fitted the shredder into the frame years prior, specifically to be activated if the piece ever went up for auction.
He was trying to assert a final act of control over the commodification process.
Yes. His rationale, which he attributed to Picasso, but which is more commonly attributed to the anarchist Mikhail Bakunin, was, the urge to destroy is also a creative urge. He was arguing that the act of destruction was the final, authentic, artistic moment.
But the prank had a hilarious accidental twist. The intent was total destruction, wasn't it?
It was. Banksy later released a follow-up video showing a sample painting being completely shredded in rehearsal. His original vision was total annihilation of the canvas. The video even had the subtitle. In rehearsals, it worked every time.
So the partial shredding was an accidental, albeit magnificent, creative failure.
Exactly. And the market's response to this partial failure redefined what art is worth. The buyer went ahead with the purchase.
The female European collector who won the bidding showed incredible nerve and just went through with it.
She did. The partially shredded work was instantly authenticated by Banksy's agency, Pest Control, and retitled Love is in the Bin. Sotheby's released that now-famous statement that completely reframed the event.
Banksy didn't destroy an artwork in the auction, he created one.
Which instantly validated it as a new work of art, a piece of documented performance history. And crucially, the partial shredding meant the piece survived to be sold again.
And the anti-capitalist statement accidentally inflated the value of his work 20-fold.
Precisely. When Love is in the Bin resold in 2021, it fetched a staggering £18.582 million, a record price for the artist at the time. His effort to destroy the commodity only resulted in creating a higher value, scarcer, and more legendary commodity. It's the perfect illustration of his central paradox.
And this is where it gets really interesting. His philosophical commitment to anti-establishment and anti-copyright principles led directly to him losing legal battles over his own images.
This is the second great contradiction. Banksy has to protect his intellectual property, but his entire ethos is against intellectual property.
So in 2019, he opened that bizarre pop-up shop, Gross Domestic Product, in Croydon.
He did it specifically to try and strengthen his trademark position against a greeting card company, Full Color Black, that was trying to legally exploit his name and sell fake Banksy merchandise.
His legal counsel advised him to open the shop to show he was actively using the trademark. This defensive move backfired spectacularly.
It did. In 2020, the European Union Intellectual Property Office, the UUIPO, ruled against Banksy regarding his trademark for his iconic flower thrower image. And the ruling was devastating.
They said the claim was filed in bad faith.
Yes, and they cited Banksy's long-standing public philosophical statement found in his own published books that copyright is for losers.
So his own philosophical manifesto was used as legal evidence against him.
That's the core of the legal paradox. The court concluded they weren't convinced that opening a temporary defensive pop-up shop showed a real intention to use the trademark in good faith. They used his own words, his own philosophy, to legally invalidate his claim.
Then his anonymity became a liability.
A major hurdle. The court noted that legal rights could not be attributed to an unidentifiable person. So his anonymous status, his greatest weapon, became his biggest weakness in court.
Moving into the current era, Banksy is still finding new ways to integrate context and nature into his art, actively designing pieces that seem to resist being commodified. Let's look at the environmental canvas he confirmed in Finsbury Park, London, in 2024.
This mural is just a masterpiece of ephemeral, site-specific engineering. The artwork is located behind this stark, heavily pruned tree, which completely dominates the foreground.
The tree is totally bare.
Completely. And Banksy painted green shades and leafy foliage onto the wall backdrop, precisely matching the municipal green used by Islington for housing estate signs.
So the bare branches of the barren tree become the painted foliage on the wall. It creates this optical illusion of a lush, healthy canopy. It's an instant, striking comment on urban decay.
That's the brilliance of it. And at ground level, there's a stenciled figure of a worker with a pressure washer, as if they're spontaneously spraying the green foliage onto the wall.
And art experts immediately noted that the nature of this piece makes it incredibly difficult to sell.
Almost impossible, because the art relies entirely on the placement of that barren, pruned tree. You can't remove it and sell it at auction without destroying its entire meaning. This design choice is a permanent physical resistance to commercial removal.
He also targeted one of the most visible symbols of legal authority in London very recently in 2025.
In the early hours of September 8, 2025, a controversial Banksy mural appeared on the Royal Courts of Justice. It depicted a judge violently beating a protester with a gavel.
And given the timing, commentators suggested it was a direct commentary on recent arrests of environmental and political protesters.
That's the consensus, and the response from the state was swift.
How long did it last?
Not long at all. The work appeared on September 8th and was immediately covered up by court staff with a large metal sheet and fencing the same day. It was removed entirely 2 days later. The speed of the response just highlights how seriously government buildings take his commentary. But the sources noted that a faint shadow of the mural remained. The memory of the critique persists, even if the image is gone.
Let's shift back to his published material for a second, because the sources show a fascinating evolution in his tone, one that parallels his rise to mass market fame.
His early works were a series of 3 self-published booklets: Banging Your Head Against a Brick Wall, Existentialism, and Cut It Out.
And the tone in these was deliberately unpolished, dark, angry.
And as he described it, paranoid. They were notable for having numerous grammatical errors, which added to that scruffy, authentic underground feel.
And then when he went for mass market distribution, the content was completely sanitized.
Precisely. His mass market book, Wall and Peace, published by Random House in 2007, compiled large parts of those original books, but it was heavily edited. The stories were altered to have a much less provocative tone, and importantly, all the grammatical errors were corrected.
It's a subtle editorial shift that shows the negotiation, maintaining the edgy persona while being packaged for widespread consumption.
That's it.
So what does this all mean for his long-term legacy and his control over his own art?
Well, Banksy himself no longer sells photographs or reproductions of his street graffiti. He uses his agency, Pest Control, solely for non-public sales and, crucially, for the authentication of his works.
So Pest Control is the only official handler of original Banksy pieces.
It's his final defense. Even if he loses the trademark battle over the images themselves, this system lets him strictly control the integrity of what is considered authentic Banksy artwork in the market.
The ultimate control isn't ownership, but provenance.
Yes. His greatest legal threat now comes from that bad faith ruling, which challenges his ability to defend his work at all. However, as the sources indicate, he is still working. He has to constantly produce and authenticate new work just to stay ahead of the legal vultures trying to commercialize his anonymity.
So we've taken a deep dive into the world's most elusive artist, walking through the incredible, often self-defeating paradoxes that define Banksy. He is the anonymous political activist who unintentionally created the world's most dramatic auction moment, turning property damage into record-breaking wealth. He's the anti-capitalist whose authentic rebellion became the most valuable commodity in the system he despises.
And what's fascinating here is how his technical method, that early shift to stencils, became the primary engine of his global fame. That speed, born of pure necessity combined with his anonymity, allowed him to deliver immediate, powerful social commentary all across the globe.
He established a guerrilla operating procedure that the market loves but can never fully contain.
Because the moment the system touches it, he has a new critique ready. His entire career is just this ongoing study in the guerrilla warfare waged against the forces of commercialization and state power.
And this struggle is far from over.
Not at all. We know that as his legal team prepares for another tribunal in 2025 at the UK's Intellectual Property Office, they're going to confront the very legal system he despises, struggling to defend images created by a person who doesn't legally exist. So we are left with this provocative question for you to consider.
When an artist's anonymity is their most powerful tool, the protective mask that fuels their reputation, how long can they continue to wage guerrilla warfare against the very system that has made them immortal, before that crucial tool of anonymity becomes the biggest hurdle to maintaining control over their own work?
Anonymity is Banksy's shield, but as the courts have proved, it might also be his fatal legal weakness.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.